Over the freezing Arctic waters, 381 Navy SEALs were stranded after a covert mission went horribly wrong. The mission had been classified from the start, even the coordinates were redacted on most systems. All anyone knew was that it involved intercepting a Russian arms convoy hidden deep beneath the northern ice shelves. It was supposed to be a quick extraction, a 3-hour in-and-out operation. But now, 22 hours had passed, and not a single SEAL had made it home. The Arctic night was endless, black skies merging with white ice, a world where even sound seemed frozen. A low growl of wind swept across the tundra, carrying fragments of shredded metal and burnt cloth. The crash site was a wasteland of twisted steel and human exhaustion. Smoke curled upward from what remained of the extraction helicopters, their fuselages half buried in snow, their engines silent. Inside a makeshift perimeter, the SEALs huddled together, using debris to shield themselves from the storm. Commander Nathan Briggs, their leader, knelt over a radio, tapping at it with frostbitten fingers. The signal was dying fast. "Command, this is Bravo Strike," his voice crackled through static. "We need immediate air evac. Coordinates attached. We've got hostiles approaching from the North Ridge, repeat, hostiles inbound." Silence. Then only static. The communications officer, Lieutenant Harris, shook his head. "They're jamming us again, sir. Satellite links gone." Briggs exhaled slowly, eyes scanning the white horizon. Out there, the enemy was moving, unseen but close. They were mercenaries, trained and brutal, hired to make sure no one left that ice alive. "Set up the perimeter," Briggs ordered. "Ammo check. Nobody dies here tonight." The men moved like machines, their training keeping them alive even as hope faded. Above them, the snow thickened, and the temperature dropped below -40°C. Their thermal scanners flickered and failed. Batteries froze. Breath turned to ice crystals in seconds. Miles away, at Thule Air Base, Greenland, alarms were going off. In the command tower, a dozen officers crowded around radar screens. The helicopter beacon had disappeared hours ago. A blinking red dot marked the SEALs' last known location, but the storm had swallowed all signals after that. "Can we get a bird in the air?" The base commander barked. "Negative, sir," replied the operations tech. "Winds at 70 knots, visibility at 0. Any chopper we send won't make it 50 miles. Then what the hell do we do? We've got 381 operators out there freezing to death." No one had an answer. Then, a quiet voice broke the tension. "I can go." Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway was Captain Avery Cole, her flight suit half-zipped, helmet tucked under her arm. The patches on her shoulder read USAF 303rd Fighter Squadron, A-10 Thunderbolt II. The commander frowned. "Cole, this isn't your fight. We've got no authorization for air action." "With respect, sir," she said, her tone calm but firm. "I'm not asking for permission." The room went silent. Everyone knew her record. Avery was one of the most skilled A-10 pilots in the force, but also one of the most stubborn. 2 years earlier, she'd flown through an Afghan sandstorm to rescue a pinned convoy when everyone else turned back. She didn't care about medals. She cared about lives. The commander rubbed his temples. "Avery, listen to me. We have no visuals, no radar, and no coordinates stable enough to lock onto. You'd be flying blind in a snowstorm. You'd never find them. Then I'll make my own way in," she said softly. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, known among soldiers as the Warthog, wasn't built for grace. It was built for survival. Twin engines mounted high, armor thick enough to shrug off anti-aircraft fire, and a GAU-8 Avenger cannon powerful enough to chew through tanks. It was a war machine, and Avery knew every inch of it like it was part of her own body. She climbed into the cockpit, hands steady despite the icy wind slashing her face. Ground crew shouted warnings as she strapped in, but she didn't hear them. Her mind was already far above the clouds, where those men were waiting. "Thunder 1 requesting manual launch clearance," she said into the headset. The air traffic controller hesitated. "Captain, we've got orders to ground all aircraft. You'll be flying into a Category 5 Arctic cyclone. Visibility's 0, repeat, 0. "I understand," Avery replied. "Launching anyway." She slammed the throttle forward. The Warthog roared to life, engines screaming as snow whipped across the tarmac. The control tower lit up with red lights, but Avery didn't stop. The jet tore down the runway, wheels slicing through slush, then lifted into the storm, vanishing in seconds. Inside the blizzard, it was chaos. Clouds swallowed the horizon, lightning crackled between sheets of snow, turning the world into a blur of white and blue. The jet bucked and rattled as ice built up along the wings. "Hold together, girl," Avery muttered, flicking on manual de-icing. The A-10 shuddered but obeyed. Her altimeter spun wildly. Compass readings were useless. The radar pinged once, then died completely. The only thing she had left was instinct. She flew low, dangerously low, hugging the ice shelf and using terrain echoes to stay level. Every few seconds she caught a glimpse of the frozen sea below, vast and merciless. Then, faintly, a signal crackled through her headset. "Mayday, this is Bravo Strike, anyone copy?" Her eyes widened. "Bravo Strike, this is Thunder 1, I hear you. Say your location." Static. Then a voice. "God, you're real. Coordinates, Crackle, down 2 miles west of Crackle, enemy movement on ridge." The signal cut again. Avery exhaled, staring at the frozen map on her display. She couldn't rely on tech. She had to guess. Using the fragments of coordinates, she adjusted her heading northeast. The fuel gauge dropped another bar. "Hang in there, boys," she whispered. "I'm coming." Back at the crash site, Commander Briggs crouched beside the radio operator. "Did you get anything?" "Just a voice," Harris said. "Sounded female. Might have been our imagination." Before Briggs could answer, a distant rumble echoed through the storm. At first, it sounded like thunder. Then, a deeper growl, mechanical and furious. The SEALs looked up. A shadow cut across the sky, wings wide, engines howling. Avery had found them. The A-10 swooped down through the blizzard like a ghost, skimming barely 100 feet above the ground. The SEALs waved flares, their orange glow flickering through the snow. She locked eyes on the signal and banked hard, engines screaming as she circled overhead. Then she saw them, and the enemy closing in. More than 50 hostiles were advancing from the north ridge, moving fast across the ice, armored vehicles behind them. If they reached the crash site, it would be a massacre. Avery's voice came over the SEALs radio. "Greater than, Bravo Strike, this is Thunder 1. Mark your perimeter and stay down." Briggs grabbed the mic. "Whoever you are, you're flying in a damn hurricane. You can't." "Greater than, wasn't asking permission, Commander." Avery armed her GAU-8 cannon. The cockpit shook as the system powered up, a deep metallic rumble that filled the jet. She adjusted her targeting manually. The enemy convoy appeared as faint heat signatures through the snow. "Let's make some noise," she said. She dived. The A-10 opened fire, and the night erupted. The cannon thundered, 30mm rounds streaking through the dark like fiery comets. The ice shattered under the impact, vehicles exploded in flashes of orange. Mercenaries scattered, their silhouettes vanishing into the storm. Below, the SEALs cheered. "Holy hell, she's hitting them blind." Avery pulled up hard, the G-force slamming her against the seat. Her radar flared with alerts, incoming missiles. She yanked the stick left, released flares, and dove again. Explosions lit the sky behind her. "Still here," she muttered through gritted teeth. Her breathing was heavy, adrenaline surging. Every second in the air risked her life, but turning back wasn't an option. Not until every SEAL had a way out. As the battle raged below, Avery's oxygen gauge began to flash red. Fuel was dropping fast. She knew she had maybe 15 minutes before she'd be forced to ditch the jet. "Command, this is Thunder 1, she radioed. "I've located Bravo Strike. They're alive, but under heavy fire. Request immediate evac chopper." No answer. She repeated the call, louder this time. Still nothing. Her heart sank. She realized she was alone up here, completely cut off. So she did the only thing she could. She stayed. Every few minutes, she'd make another strafing run, keeping the attackers pinned down. The SEALs used the distraction to regroup and build a defensive line. The radio crackled again, this time, Briggs' voice. "Thunder 1, whoever you are, you just saved 381 lives." Avery smiled faintly. "Not yet, Commander. You're still on that ice." She glanced at the horizon, and saw something that made her blood run cold. 2 heat signatures. Fast, big, surface-to-air missile launchers. They fired. Avery's radar screamed as the missiles locked on. She pulled the stick, banking hard, but one hit the left engine. The A-10 jolted violently, smoke pouring from the rear. Warning lights flashed across her cockpit. She could eject, but if she did, the SEALs would be defenseless. "Come on, baby," she muttered, slamming the throttle. "Hold together." The jet trembled, groaned, but stayed aloft. Below, the SEALs watched in awe as she made another pass, crippled but unbroken. Her cannon roared again, shattering the missile trucks. The explosions lit up the sky, casting her silhouette in firelight. For a moment, the battlefield was silent. Then Briggs' voice came again. Thunder 1, who are you? Avery exhaled, eyes on the horizon. Just someone who couldn't let you die. The Arctic storm raged like a living monster, swallowing sound and light in its frozen jaws. Captain Avery Cole gripped the A-10's control stick, her gloved fingers trembling as the aircraft shook violently. Warning lights flashed red across the dashboard, hydraulic pressure low, engine failure imminent, fuel below 10%. Her left engine was trailing smoke, coughing out bursts of flame as it struggled to stay alive. The cockpit smelled of burning metal and ozone. Every few seconds, static crackled through her headset, followed by the hollow roar of wind. But still, she refused to pull the ejection handle. Below her, 381 Navy SEALs huddled beneath the wreckage of their downed helicopters. She could see them as faint shadows through the snow, scattered lights flickering from their emergency flares. They were alive because she'd shown up. If she bailed now, they were dead men. A voice broke through the static, Commander Briggs. Greater than, Thunder 1, this is Bravo Strike. You're hit, you have to pull out before that thing falls apart. Avery's voice was calm but cold. Greater than, negative, Commander. I'm not leaving you behind. Briggs shouted something back, but his words dissolved into static. Avery checked her radar, nothing. The snowstorm had completely blinded every system. She was flying in a white void, guided only by instinct and the faint orange glow of the SEALs' flares. She switched to manual flight mode, ignoring the computerized warnings screaming at her. Computer, you're not the boss, she muttered. The A-10 bucked again, groaning like a wounded animal. It was a miracle she was still in the air at all. Then, from the corner of her eye, she spotted movement, enemy heat signatures moving across the ice toward the SEALs' perimeter. Trucks. Dozens of them. Reinforcements. Avery swore under her breath. Of course they brought company. She looked at her ammunition counter. She had less than 30 seconds worth of cannon fire left, and only 2 guided bombs. That wasn't enough. She took a breath, steadying herself. All right, boys, one more dance. Dash dash dash. At the crash site, Commander Briggs barked orders. Positions. Defensive line east. Move, move, move. His men scrambled into formation, rifles aimed into the storm. The mercenaries were closing in, their flashlights bobbing like ghosts in the whiteout. One SEAL shouted, "Sir, the pilot's still up there." Briggs turned his gaze skyward. Through the blizzard, he caught the faint shadow of Avery's A-10 banking wide, coming back around for another run. The right wing wobbled, leaking fuel. "She's insane," he muttered. "She's actually coming back." The next few seconds were chaos. The A-10 screamed overhead, engines howling like thunder. Its 30mm cannon opened fire again, ripping into the enemy convoy. Tracer rounds cut through the dark like flaming arrows, detonating ammunition trucks in spectacular bursts. Every explosion lit up the snow, turning the battlefield into a storm of light and ice. Avery's breathing was ragged. Come on, come on. Her left wing dipped dangerously. The control stick fought her like a live snake. But she didn't ease up. She made another pass, then another, each one lower than before. On the third run, a surface-to-air missile shot up from the ridge. "Missile lock," she shouted, pulling hard on the stick. The jet rolled, narrowly avoiding the first strike. The second missile clipped her right wingtip, ripping it apart. The cockpit filled with alarms. Beep beep beep. Fuel gushed from the wound, spraying across the ice below. Avery gritted her teeth. "You're not dying yet." She glanced at her HUD, 20 miles to Thule Air Base. If she turned back now, she might make it. But the SEALs wouldn't. Her mind replayed her commander's voice from earlier that night. "You're violating every regulation in the book." She smiled bitterly. "Guess I'm rewriting the book." Dash dash dash. Back at Thule, the control room was in panic mode. Officers were shouting over each other, trying to track Avery's signal. "Sir, she's still airborne, she's engaging the hostiles." The base commander slammed his fist on the table. "She disobeyed a direct order. Get me a rescue chopper out there now." "But, sir, the storm." "I don't care about the storm. She's out there alone." The radar tech looked up from his console. "Sir, if she stays on that course, she's going down in less than 15 minutes. Everyone in the room went silent. Dash dash dash. Meanwhile, In the skies above the Arctic, Avery's focus narrowed to a single point, the enemy command vehicle, now racing across the ice. It was heavily armored, bristling with turrets. Her targeting system flickered, barely operational, but she could still see the faint heat bloom from the engine. She armed her last 2 bombs. "This one's for all of them," she whispered. She nosed the jet down into a steep dive, the ground rushing up fast. The altimeter screamed warnings, but she ignored them. Wind tore at the wings, snow stung her face through a crack in the canopy. At 200 feet, she released both bombs. The A-10 jerked upward, struggling to climb. A heartbeat later, the world exploded. The shockwave slammed into her aircraft, flipping it sideways. She fought the controls, trying to level out, but her right wing was gone. The jet spiraled violently. "Come on, girl, hold it together," she yelled, teeth clenched. For a moment, it seemed like she'd lost it. Then the Warthog steadied, barely. Smoke poured from both engines. She was losing altitude fast. Below, the SEALs cheered as the explosions tore through the enemy lines. Flames roared across the ice, and the remaining mercenaries scattered into the storm. Briggs keyed his radio. "Thunder 1, we're clear. You did it. Pull up, pull up." But Avery didn't respond. Inside the cockpit, her vision blurred. Oxygen low, systems failing. The aircraft shook violently, every alarm screaming at once. She blinked sweat and frost from her eyes, forcing herself to stay conscious. Not yet. Her mind drifted back, memories flashing like lightning. Her first solo flight, the laughter of her crew. The day her brother's squad never made it back from a rescue op. The reason she joined the Air Force in the first place. Saving people, no matter what it cost. Her head jerked up. The SEALs were still trapped out there, freezing. Even if the enemy was gone, they wouldn't survive the night without rescue. Avery keyed her emergency channel. "Thule Command, this is Thunder 1. Mission area secure. Need immediate evac for 381 personnel. All mark their location with flares. Static. Then, greater than, copy, Thunder 1, hold position. Choppers en route." Relief washed through her chest. Finally, she banked the crippled A-10 around one last time, circling the crash site. From above, she could see the SEALs waving their arms, cheering, their flares lighting the ice. Her fuel gauge hit 0. The engines coughed, then died. At Thule, the radio operator looked up sharply. "Sir, we just lost Thunder 1's signal." The commander froze. "What do you mean lost?" "Gone, sir. No transponder. No IFF. Nothing. Get me her location." But it was already too late. On the ice, Briggs stared up at the sky. The sound of the A-10 faded into silence. He felt a knot in his chest. "Thunder 1, do you copy?" He called into his radio. Nothing. Then, faintly, a flash in the distance, a falling star trailing smoke and fire. Briggs closed his eyes. "Godspeed, whoever you were." Miles away, Avery fought with the controls as the jet dropped toward the ice. The altimeter spun down past 1,000 feet. She was out of power, out of altitude, and almost out of time. "Eject, damn it," she muttered. But she hesitated. The SEALs were below her. If she ejected now, the burning jet might crash straight into them. So she angled the nose toward open sea, pushing the last of her strength into one final maneuver. At 300 feet, she pulled the ejection handle. The canopy blew off with a burst of snow and flame. The seat rocketed upward, launching her into the night. Seconds later, the A-10 slammed into the ice, detonating in a blinding fireball. Avery's parachute deployed, flapping violently in the wind. The freezing air bit through her flight suit like knives. She hit the ground hard, rolling across the ice until she came to a stop near a jagged ridge. Her visor was cracked, her oxygen tank broken. Every breath burned, but she was alive. She crawled to the edge of a snowbank and looked out. In the distance, she saw the faint lights of the SEALs, flares still glowing against the storm. A small smile touched her lips. Mission accomplished. Hours later, as dawn broke over the Arctic, the rescue choppers arrived. They found the SEALs alive, and a trail of smoke leading east. A search team followed it and discovered Avery half buried in snow beside the wreck of her jet. Her skin was frostbitten, her pulse weak. But she was breathing. When they lifted her onto the stretcher, Commander Briggs knelt beside her and whispered. "Greater than, you saved every one of us. You're a damn legend." Her eyes flickered open just long enough to reply. "Greater than, I just did my job, sir. 2 days later, the official report landed on the base commander's desk. It was short and clinical, filled with military jargon. But one line stood out. Greater than, pilot disobeyed direct orders, engaged hostile forces without authorization, and prevented the deaths of 381 Navy SEALs. Beneath it, in bold red ink, someone had stamped, "Mission successful." That night, in the mess hall at Thule Air Base, silence fell as Avery Cole walked in on crutches. The entire room of SEALs and airmen stood at attention. Commander Briggs raised his glass. To the pilot who broke every rule, and saved every soul. The men roared with applause. Avery just smiled, eyes glistening. "Next time," she said quietly, "let's not make me do it alone." The world looked different when Captain Avery Cole opened her eyes again. A ceiling of pale hospital lights shimmered above her. The steady beep of a heart monitor pulsed at her side. Her throat was dry, her body heavy, and every breath hurt. For a few seconds, she thought she was still in the storm, until she felt warmth against her skin. A voice said softly, "She's awake." Avery turned her head, groaning. Commander Nathan Briggs was sitting beside her hospital bed, his arm in a sling and his face bandaged. He gave a tired smile. "Welcome back, Captain," he said. "You've been out for 3 days." She blinked slowly, her mind catching up. "The SEALs, alive," he said, "all 381 of them. Every single one." Relief washed through her chest like sunlight through fog. She exhaled shakily and stared at the ceiling. "Then it was worth it." Briggs nodded, but his expression darkened. "Command doesn't see it that way." Avery frowned. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "They're calling it an unauthorized combat sortie. You broke airspace regulations, launched without clearance, and destroyed enemy targets without written approval. There's an inquiry starting in 48 hours. She stared at him in disbelief. "I saved them, Briggs. I saved you." "I know," he said quietly. "But the Air Force doesn't like heroes who don't follow orders." 2 weeks later, Pentagon hearing room. The walls of the military tribunal were white, sterile, and silent. A line of brass-decorated officers sat behind a long wooden table, their expressions unreadable. Flags hung motionless behind them. Avery stood before them, wearing her dress blues, her left leg still stiff from the crash. Her chest ribbon bar gleamed faintly under the lights, the only color in the room. A colonel read aloud from a file. "Greater than, Captain Avery Cole, charged with unauthorized takeoff, reckless endangerment of government property, violation of airspace command protocol, and engagement of enemy forces without command approval." He closed the folder and looked at her. "Do you understand the charges?" "Yes, sir," Avery said evenly. "Do you have any statement before we begin?" She took a breath, her voice calm but firm. "Just this. If breaking those rules is what it took to save 381 lives, I'd do it again." A murmur rippled through the room. One of the generals leaned forward. "Captain, the United States military cannot operate on emotion. We operate on orders." "With respect, sir," she said, "sometimes the people giving those orders aren't the ones freezing to death on the ice." The room went dead silent. The lead officer tapped his pen against the desk. "Proceed." For the next 2 hours, they questioned her relentlessly, about every decision, every flight maneuver, every second of that night. "Why did you disobey the ground order?" "Because I heard men dying." "Why didn't you wait for authorization?" "Because they would have been dead by the time it came." "Why did you continue flying after taking missile damage?" "Because if I didn't, no one else would." Her answers were short, steady, and real. But the board's faces stayed blank. Finally, one of them asked, "Captain Cole, are you aware that your actions destroyed over $45 million in Air Force equipment?" Avery looked him straight in the eye. "Then that was the best $45 million the government ever spent." The youngest officer at the table hid a smirk behind his hand. When the hearing ended, they dismissed her pending final judgment. As she walked out of the room, she passed through a hallway lined with portraits, faces of men and women who had changed history. She wondered how many of them had been punished first. Outside the building, snow fell softly over Washington, D.C. It reminded her of that night, the cold, the silence, the weight of responsibility. Briggs was waiting for her by the steps. "How bad?" she shrugged. "Could go either way." He looked at her for a moment. "Whatever happens, Cole, we owe you everything." She smiled faintly. "Then make sure they remember that." A week later, Thule Air Base, Greenland. The SEALs stood in perfect formation on the icy runway. Helicopters gleamed behind them, their blades glinting in the weak sunlight. At the center stood Commander Briggs, a metal case in his hand. As Avery stepped out of the hangar, the men turned to face her. She froze, surprised. She hadn't expected this. Briggs cleared his throat. "Captain Avery Cole," he began, his voice steady. "On behalf of every man you saved that night, the 381 souls who stand here today, we want to thank you. The paperwork might call it disobedience. We call it something else." He opened the case and pulled out a medal, the Navy Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor. Gasps rippled through the formation. Avery stared. "Briggs, that's not even an Air Force award." He grinned. "We borrowed it." The men laughed, but many had tears in their eyes. Briggs stepped forward and pinned the medal to her chest. "You may have broken every rule in the book, Captain, but you wrote a new one while you were at it." The SEALs saluted. Hundreds of gloved hands rose in unison, sharp against the Arctic sky. For a long moment, Avery couldn't speak. Then she simply whispered, "Thank you." Later that night, the airfield was quiet again, the northern lights glowing faintly overhead. Avery sat on the wing of a repaired A-10, a mug of coffee steaming beside her. Colonel Shepard, her commanding officer, approached. "You're not supposed to be near that jet yet." "Just checking on an old friend," she said softly. He sighed, leaning against the fuselage. "You know, the board hasn't reached a decision yet. Half of them want to court-martial you. The other half want to promote you." "Which half are you?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "The half that thinks you did what needed to be done." They watched the lights in silence. "She's a stubborn bird," he said, patting the A-10's metal skin. "You both are." Avery smirked. "Guess we were made for each other." A month later, the decision. The official verdict arrived in a plain brown envelope. Avery sat alone in her quarters when she opened it. Greater than Captain Avery Cole, found in violation of direct orders and operational protocols. However, due to exceptional valor, skill, and successful recovery of 381 U.S. personnel, all disciplinary action is hereby suspended. Effective immediately, Captain Cole is reassigned to the 303rd Tactical Training Command, as lead instructor. At the bottom was a handwritten note. "Greater than you can't teach courage, but maybe you can teach judgment. General H. Walters." Avery stared at the paper for a long time, then folded it neatly and smiled. 1 year later, Nevada desert. The sun blazed over the desert airstrip. 4 A-10s lined up on the tarmac, engines humming. Inside the hangar, a group of young pilots listened intently as their new instructor paced in front of them. She wore sunglasses, her voice calm and steady. "Lesson 1, she said. "The manual will keep you alive 90% of the time. The other 10%, that's when the manual won't help you. That's when you listen to your gut, and remember who you're fighting for." One of the rookies raised a hand. "Ma'am, is it true you flew through a blizzard to rescue SEALs in the Arctic?" Avery stopped, looking at him. "It's true I flew through a blizzard," she said. "The rest depends on who's telling the story." Laughter rippled through the class. She smiled faintly. "All right, gear up, let's see if any of you can keep up with me." That night, after the training flights, Avery sat alone on a bench outside the hangar. The desert sky stretched endlessly above her, filled with stars. She closed her eyes, hearing the faint echo of the A-10's engines in her mind, that deep, familiar growl she would never forget. Briggs' voice came from behind her. "Never thought I'd see you on dry land again." She turned, smiling. "You never stop showing up, do you?" He shrugged. "Someone's gotta make sure you don't get bored." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a photograph, the SEAL team standing together on Arctic ice, holding a banner that read, 381 souls, one guardian angel. Her eyes shimmered. "You kept this." "We all did," he said. "You're the reason we're still breathing." Avery stared at the photo for a long time, then whispered, "I didn't save you." "The A-10 did." Briggs smiled. "Then maybe we should thank her too." Final scene, Legacy. Years later, in a museum near Washington, D.C., visitors would stop before a weather-worn piece of aircraft wreckage. A small sign beneath it read, "Greater than remains of A-10 Thunderbolt II, tail number 1347. Pilot, Captain Avery Cole." The aircraft crashed during a rescue mission in the Arctic, saving 381 U.S. Navy SEALs. Pilot survived. Jet did not. Beside it, A quote was engraved in steel. Greater than, sometimes courage doesn't mean following orders. It means flying through the storm anyway. Every year, new cadets from both the Navy and Air Force visited that display. They read her story, stared at the battered metal, and understood something their manuals never taught. That rules can guide you, but heart is what saves people. And somewhere high above, perhaps in the wind itself, the faint echo of an A-10's engine still rumbled, a ghostly promise that heroes never